The ridge stretched across the horizon like a jagged scar on the planet's surface. Commander Thralax of the Krenari battle fleet stood at the edge of the observation deck, his 4 eyes narrowing at the scan results displayed before him. The geological formation was unremarkable by most standards, just another piece of barren rock on this forgotten world called Earth. But it held strategic value. Whoever controlled the ridge controlled the valley below, and whoever controlled the valley controlled the only viable route to the human colony's underground water reserves. "Single life form detected," his tactical officer announced, her mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. "Human, armed with primitive ballistic weapons." Thralax's expression didn't change. He had been fighting humans for 3 standard cycles now, ever since the Krenari Dominion had begun its expansion into this sector. They were weak creatures, physically speaking. No natural armor, no venom, no enhanced sensory organs. They broke easily. Their bones were brittle. Their skin tore like wet paper, and yet they refused to surrender. "One human?" Thralax repeated, his voice carrying the grating tone of his species. "Just one?" "Confirmed, Commander. He appears to be fortified at the highest point of the ridge. No backup detected within a 50-kilometer radius." Thralax turned away from the viewport. This was almost insulting. The humans knew the Krenari were coming. They had to know. Satellite surveillance would have shown his battalion moving across the continent. 3,000 warriors, the finest the Dominion had to offer, equipped with plasma rifles, shield generators, and combat mechs. And the humans sent one defender? "Perhaps it's a trap," suggested his second-in-command, Vexillar. "The humans are known for their deception." "Scan again," Thralax ordered. "Full spectrum. I want to know if they have any hidden forces, any buried explosives, any orbital support." The minutes ticked by as his crew worked. The results came back clean. No hidden troops, no mines, no satellites overhead that could provide fire support. Just one human, sitting on a ridge, apparently waiting for them. "Send a forward squad," Thralax commanded. 20 warriors. Have them take the ridge." The Krenari prided themselves on efficiency. Within minutes, the squad was assembled and moving toward the ridge. Thralax watched through the shared combat feeds, seeing through the eyes of squad leader Crix. And the rocky terrain was difficult, but manageable. The ridge rose ahead of them, a natural fortress of stone and shadow. "Contact in 30 seconds, Crix reported. His voice was steady, professional. 20 against 1. This would be over before it began. The first shot came when they were halfway up the slope. The crack of the rifle echoed across the valley, sharp and sudden. One of Crix's warriors dropped, a hole punched clean through his combat helmet. The second shot followed before the first body hit the ground. Another warrior fell. "Take cover!" Crix screamed, diving behind a boulder. His squad scattered, seeking whatever protection the rocky terrain could offer. But the shots kept coming. Methodical. Precise. Every 3 seconds, another crack. Another body. So Thralax watched in growing disbelief as his squad was systematically dismantled. The human wasn't spraying fire wildly like some panicked defender. Each shot was deliberate. Each one a kill. The Krenari warriors tried to return fire, but they couldn't even see their target. The human was using the ridge itself as cover, firing from different positions, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. "Crix, fall back," Thralax ordered, but it was already too late. The last 3 members of the squad were running, abandoning their position, when the final shots rang out. They fell one after another, cut down as they fled. 20 warriors, dead in less than 3 minutes. The observation deck was silent. Thralax's command staff stared at the displays, at the 20 red markers indicating fallen soldiers. 1 human. No primitive weapons. 20 trained warriors dead. "Send another squad," Thralax said quietly. 40 warriors this time. Tell them to advance from multiple angles. Use smoke grenades for cover. Vexillar hesitated. "Commander, perhaps we should reconsider. The terrain heavily favors the defender. We could simply bypass the ridge and..." No, Thrylax's voice was sharp. We will not be turned back by a single human. The ridge is strategically vital. We take it. The second assault began 10 minutes later. 40 warriors, approaching from 3 different directions, obscured by billowing clouds of thermal smoke that would disrupt visual targeting. It should have worked. It should have been overwhelming. But the human adapted. And the first indication that something was wrong came when a grenade arced out from the ridge and landed perfectly in the center of one advancing group. The explosion tore through shields and armor alike. Then came the gunfire, not the precision shots from before, but rapid bursts aimed into the smoke clouds. The human couldn't see through the smoke any better than the Krynari could, but he didn't need to. He knew where they would be, what routes they would take. He was firing at positions, not targets. And when the smoke cleared, when the surviving warriors thought they finally had their chance, the sniper shots resumed. The human had switched back to his rifle, picking off the scattered survivors with the same cold efficiency as before. 37 more dead. 3 made it back to the main force, all wounded. Thrylax stood in front of the tactical display, his 4 eyes fixed on that single red dot marking the human's position. Around him, his command staff waited in silence. The losses were mounting, nearly 60 warriors dead, and they hadn't even scratched the defender. "Deploy the combat mechs," he finally said. 2 of them. Have them provide suppressing fire while 100 warriors advance. I want that ridge taken within the hour. This time, surely, this would be enough. The combat mechs were 4 meters tall, armored with reinforced plating that could withstand anti-vehicle weapons. Their rotary cannons could level buildings. 100 warriors, supported by that kind of firepower, would be unstoppable. The assault began with a thunderous roar as the mechs opened fire, sending thousands of rounds cascading toward the ridge. Rock shattered. Dust filled the air. Under that covering fire, the warriors advanced in tight formation, shields overlapping, moving fast. The human let them get close, closer than before. The mechs continued their barrage, tearing chunks out of the ridge's face. The warriors were almost at the top when the human made his move. The first rocket came from an angle the mechs hadn't covered. It struck the lead mech in the joint where the leg met the body, right where the armor was thinnest. The machine stumbled, its pilot fighting for control. The second rocket hit it in the same spot on the other side. The mech toppled, crashing down the slope and crushing 3 warriors beneath its bulk. The second mech tried to adjust, to find the threat, but the human was already moving. Another rocket, and this one aimed at the sensor array on the mech's head. Blinded, the machine fired wildly, its cannons ripping into its own troops as much as the empty ridge. A 4th rocket finished it, striking the power core. The explosion lit up the valley. The warriors broke. They ran, scrambling back down the slope as the human resumed his rifle fire, dropping the slowest runners with casual accuracy. Thrylax watched it all, watched his finest troops retreat in disarray. Watched the wreckage of 2 combat mechs burn on the slopes. Watched that single red dot remain unmoved, untouched, defiant. "Get me a communication channel to that position," he said, his voice very quiet now. "I want to speak with this human." The communication took several minutes to establish. The human had to be persuaded to accept the signal, convinced that it wasn't some kind of trick. When the channel finally opened, Thrylax found himself looking at a face that seemed almost unremarkable. 2 eyes, not 4. Pale skin marked with dirt and sweat. Dark hair matted to the forehead. The face of prey, not a predator, except for the eyes. The eyes were different. They held something Thrylax had seen before in other species, but never quite like this. Not fear, not anger. Just a cold, absolute determination. "I am Commander Thrylax of the Krynari Dominion," he began, keeping his voice formal. "You have fought well, human. You have my respect. But this is futile. You cannot win. I have 3,000 warriors. You are one." The human was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like someone who hadn't used it in days. Name's Marcus Cole, Corporal. Earth Defense Force, and you're right about one thing. I can't win. Then surrender. I will grant you honorable treatment. Can't do that either. Marcus shifted, and Thrallax could see he was sitting behind a makeshift barricade of rocks, his rifle resting against the stones. See, about 6 kilometers that way there's a colony. 300 people. Farmers mostly. Scientists. Some kids. They're heading for the underground shelters right now. Need another 12 hours to get everyone down and sealed in. You cannot hold this position for 12 hours. Probably not. Marcus picked up a canteen and took a drink. But I can try. And every hour I hold you here is another hour those people have to get to safety. Thrallax studied the human's face. You would die for them? Already did, back on Earth. Got better. There was a hint of dark humor in Marcus's voice. Had a wife and daughter there. Lost them when your people hit Buenos Aires. Figured I didn't have much left to lose. I am sorry for your loss. Thrallax meant it. He had family too. But that does not change the tactical situation. We will take this ridge. If not today, then tomorrow. If not with warriors, then with orbital strikes. You might, Marcus agreed, but you won't do it in the next 12 hours. Not if you want to keep your soldiers alive. See, I've been doing some math. You've lost, what, 60 warriors so far? Maybe 70? And 2 mechs. At that rate, you'll need to sacrifice about 500 of your soldiers to dig me out of here, maybe more. You overestimate your capabilities. Do I? Marcus gestured to the ridge around him. I've got high ground. Yeah, I've got ammunition for days. I've got water, food, medical supplies. And I've got something else. Something you Krenari don't seem to understand about humans. And what is that? We're stubborn. Stupidly stubborn. We don't know when to quit. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You want this ridge? Come and take it. But every meter is going to cost you blood. Thrallax cut the connection. He stood there for a long moment, considering his options. He could pull back, wait for orbital support, but that would take time, and time was what the human wanted. He could try to go around the ridge, but that would expose his forces to attacks from the high ground the entire way. The terrain didn't allow for easy alternatives. No, the human was right about one thing. This was going to cost blood. See, prepare for sustained assault, he ordered. All forces. We take the ridge in waves, overwhelm his ability to respond. What followed was a battle that would be studied in Krenari military academies for generations to come. Not because of any brilliant tactics or stunning reversals, but because it demonstrated something fundamental about human nature that the Dominion had failed to understand. The Krenari came in waves, just as Thrallax ordered. 100 warriors at a time advancing under covering fire, using every tactical advantage they possessed, and Marcus Cole met them each time. He fought with everything he had. When his rifle ran out of long-range ammunition, he switched to closer-quarter weapons. When they got too close for bullets, he used grenades. When the grenades ran out, he rigged traps from the equipment around him. The rockfalls that crushed advancing troops, fuel caches that exploded when hit by plasma fire. He turned every meter of the ridge into a killing ground. And between assaults, he rested. He ate. He drank water. He checked his weapons and prepared for the next wave. He didn't rage or despair. He simply endured. The hours crawled by. 3 hours. 5. 8. The casualties mounted on both sides, though far more heavily for the Krenari. Marcus was hit several times, plasma burns on his shoulder and leg, shrapnel cuts across his face, but he kept fighting. At the 10-hour mark, Thrallax ordered a pause. His forces had lost over 400 warriors, 400, against 1 human. His command staff was in shock. Vexlar openly questioned whether they should continue. He must be nearly finished, Thrallax insisted. No being can sustain that level of combat for this long. One more push and we will have him. But even as he said it, he felt doubt. He opened the communication channel again. Marcus appeared on screen. He looked worse now, blood on his face, his movements slower. But his eyes were still clear, still determined. "Come to surrender?" Marcus asked, and there was that dark humor again. "How are you still fighting?" Thralax demanded. "You should be dead. You should have collapsed hours ago." "Should have, yeah." Marcus checked something off-screen, probably his ammunition count. "But I promised those people 12 hours. Still got 2 to go. This is insane. You are one soldier, one. One is all it takes sometimes." Marcus's voice was quiet now. "You asked how I'm still fighting? It's simple. Those people down there, they're counting on me. And I don't know how to quit on people who are counting on me. My wife taught me that. My daughter reminded me every day. They're gone now, but the lesson stuck." He paused, then added, "You want to know the funny thing? I'm not special. I'm not some super soldier or genetically enhanced warrior. I'm just a guy who showed up and decided not to leave. And there are millions of humans just like me. That's what you're up against. Not superior technology or greater numbers, just a bunch of stubborn idiots who refuse to give up." Thralax closed the channel. He looked at his tactical display, at the red markers showing his fallen warriors, at the single blue dot that represented the human. 400 dead to kill one man who was already wounded and running low on supplies. And the human was right. Yet there were millions more like him. For the first time since the war began, Thralax understood why the Dominion was losing. "Commander," Vexillar said quietly, "orders?" Thralax was silent for a long time. Then he made a decision that would alter the course of the war. "Pull back," he ordered. "All forces. We withdraw." The command deck erupted in shock. Vexillar stepped forward. "Commander, we cannot—" "We can and we will." Thralax's voice was firm. "That human has already cost us 400 warriors. He will cost us hundreds more before we take that ridge. And even if we succeed, even if we kill him, we will have proven his point. We will have shown that one human, properly motivated, properly positioned, can hold off an army." He turned to face his staff. "We have been fighting this war all wrong. We assumed human weakness meant easy victory, but we failed to account for human will. That man on the ridge, he is not an anomaly. He is an example. And if we continue this war, we will face that same determination on every world, every colony, every settlement." The Krenari forces withdrew that day. Marcus Cole watched them go through his rifle scope, too tired to even feel relief. He had promised 12 hours. He had given them 14. The message from the colony came through 3 hours after the Krenari withdrew. The civilians were safe, sealed in the underground shelters, with enough supplies to last weeks if needed. Marcus acknowledged the transmission with a simple grunt, and then collapsed. His body, pushed beyond all reasonable limits, finally gave out. He woke up 2 days later in a medical bay. The colony's chief physician, Dr. Sarah Chen, was checking his vitals when his eyes opened. "Welcome back, Corporal," she said with a tired smile. "You gave us quite a scare. Multiple plasma burns, 3 broken ribs, severe dehydration and exhaustion that would have killed most people." "Did they make it?" Marcus's voice was rough. "The people?" "Every single one." Dr. Chen helped him sit up slowly. "Thanks to you. You held that ridge for 14 hours against an army. The Krenari withdrew completely. They're gone." Marcus nodded slowly. It was done. He had kept his promise. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know in that moment, was how his stand on that nameless ridge was already changing the war. Thralax had filed his report with the Krenari High Command, and it had sent shockwaves through the Dominion's military leadership. The numbers were stark. One human defender had inflicted casualties equivalent to a full-scale battle. The cost-benefit analysis was devastating. If one human could do that much damage, what would happen when the Dominion faced organized human resistance? What would happen when they faced millions of Marcus Coles? The Crinari were a practical species. They understood mathematics. They understood loss ratios. And the mathematics of fighting humanity were becoming increasingly unfavorable. But that was politics and grand strategy, things happening in distant capitals and command centers. For Marcus, recovery was slow and painful. The colony's people treated him like a hero, which made him uncomfortable. He was just a soldier who did his job. Nothing special about that. 3 weeks after the battle, then he was walking the colony's main street when a young girl approached him. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with dark hair tied in braids and wide, curious eyes. "Mr. Cole?" she asked shyly. Marcus stopped, looking down at her. She reminded him painfully of his daughter. "That's me," he said gently. "My daddy said you saved us. He said you fought the aliens all by yourself." "I just held a position," Marcus said. "Bought some time." "Were you scared?" Marcus considered lying, then decided she deserved the truth. "Yeah, I was scared. Terrified, actually. But you stayed anyway." "I stayed anyway." The girl thought about this for a moment, then handed him something. It was a crude drawing done in crayon on repurposed packing paper. It showed a stick figure on top of a hill with smaller stick figures below. Above the scene, in careful child's handwriting, were the words, "Thank you. I made this for you," she said, "'cause you kept us safe." Marcus took the drawing with hands that shook slightly. He looked at it for a long moment, then carefully folded it and put it in his pocket. "Thank you," he managed to say. "This means a lot." The girl smiled and ran off to join her parents. Marcus watched her go, feeling something shift inside him. He had been carrying so much grief, so much anger. The loss of his family had hollowed him out, left him feeling like he had nothing left to lose. But standing there, watching that little girl rejoin her family, he realized something. He had protected something worth protecting. He had kept a promise. And in doing so, he had found a new purpose. News of the battle spread through human space like wildfire. And the story was simple enough that everyone could understand it, powerful enough that it resonated with people from every colony, every background. One man, one ridge, an entire army turned back. It became a rallying cry. Recruitment for the Earth Defense Force tripled overnight. Colonists who had been considering evacuation instead started fortifying their positions. The psychological impact was enormous. If one human could hold the line like that, imagine what organized human forces could do. The Crinari noticed. The momentum of their offensive, which had been building steadily, suddenly stalled. They found themselves facing stiffer resistance everywhere. Human defenders who might have retreated before now held their ground. Small units accomplished impossible things, inspired by the story of the man who held the ridge. 6 months after the battle, the Crinari High Command requested peace negotiations. The war wasn't over, not completely, but the Dominion was willing to discuss terms. The human diplomats were surprised, but they accepted. At the negotiating table, the Crinari representative was none other than Thralax. He had been promoted to ambassador following his report and his decision to withdraw from the ridge. During a private moment, the human negotiator asked him why the Dominion had decided to seek peace. Thralax was quiet for a moment, then said, "We believed humans were weak because they broke easily. We measured strength in physical terms. We were wrong. True strength is not in the body. It is in the will. And human will is something we cannot break, no matter how many battles we win." He paused, then added, "There was a human on a ridge. One man. He taught us that lesson. We cannot afford to fight a species where every soldier might be that determined. The cost would destroy us both." The peace treaty was signed 3 months later. It wasn't everything humanity wanted, but it was fair. More importantly, it was real. The war was over. Marcus Cole stayed on the colony. He didn't want parades or medals or recognition. He just wanted to live quietly, to help rebuild, to be part of something positive. The colony welcomed him, respected his privacy, and gave him the space he needed to heal. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would walk out to the ridge. Someone had placed a small memorial there, just a simple stone marker with the names of the Crinari warriors who had fallen. Marcus had insisted on it. They had been enemies, but they had been soldiers too, following orders, fighting for their people. They deserved to be remembered. He would stand there looking out over the valley and think about that day, about the fear and the exhaustion and the absolute determination to hold the line, about the promise he made and the promise he kept. One evening, about a year after the battle, he found he wasn't alone. Dr. Chen had walked up behind him, quiet enough that he almost didn't hear her approach. "Beautiful view," she said, coming to stand beside him. "It is," Marcus agreed. "You know, I've been thinking," Dr. Chen said, "about that day, about what you did. I keep trying to understand how you held out so long." "It wasn't anything special," Marcus said. "I just didn't leave." "That's exactly what makes it special," Dr. Chen smiled. "You stayed when anyone else would have run. And you fought when any reasonable person would have surrendered. You kept a promise that no one would have blamed you for breaking. That's not nothing, Marcus, that's everything." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I had people depending on me," he finally said. "That's all that mattered. And that's why you won." Dr. Chen looked out over the valley. "The Crinari came here with weapons and numbers and tactics, but you had something stronger. You had a reason to fight that went beyond victory or defeat. You were protecting people you cared about. That's a kind of strength that can't be defeated by superior firepower." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the valley. The same valley that 300 people had fled through, seeking safety. The same valley that the Crinari had wanted to control. And the same valley that one man had defended with nothing but determination and a promise. Years later, when historians studied the war between humanity and the Crinari Dominion, they would point to many factors that led to peace. The economic costs, the strategic stalemates, the diplomatic efforts. But soldiers on both sides knew the truth. The war ended on a ridge on a forgotten colony world, where one human proved that sometimes one person refusing to give up is enough to change everything. Marcus Cole never sought fame. He never wrote a book or gave speeches or accepted awards. He lived out his days quietly on that colony, helping where he could, being part of the community he had saved. But every year, on the anniversary of that battle, the colony would gather at the ridge. They would remember the day one man held the line. And they would tell the story to the children, making sure they understood. Not just what happened, but why it mattered. Because it wasn't a story about superhuman abilities or advanced technology or tactical genius. It was a story about something far more fundamental to human nature. It was a story about a man who made a promise and kept it, no matter the cost. About someone who stayed when he could have run. About a soldier who understood that sometimes the only backup you need is the absolute refusal to quit. And that, more than any weapon or army or fleet, was why humanity survived the war. Not because they were stronger or smarter or better equipped, but because when it mattered most, when everything hung in the balance, there would always be someone willing to hold the line. The final defender of the ridge was human. And he didn't need backup. He never did.